Alright, so I feel like doing this Warbreaker review, there needs to be this big disclaimer right at the beginning to say I have not read anything from the Cosmere or Stormlight. I've only read, as of this interview, or as of this review, I've only done Warbreaker and Elantris. So before anyone is like, wow, you don't know what you're talking about, I probably don't. I probably don't. I have not read what is considered like his more popular works of Brandon Sanderson. So I did do a video that was kind of like my first impressions after reading Elantris and Warbreaker. This is a more kind of in-depth review and my take on Warbreaker. So first and foremost, let me say that I actually liked Elantris, but I did not like Warbreaker. And a lot of people are like, that's usually the other way around. Don't know what to tell you. Did not like Warbreaker, but I actually really liked Elantris. I wouldn't say like I loved Elantris, but I'd read Elantris 2, 3, 4. You know, why not? Warbreaker? Probably not. Probably not. Yeah, I stopped laughing because, you know, I'm not trying to be an asshole. But so this is gonna be like a back-to-back pro and con because it's kind of like, you know, two halves of the same coin. So the first pro is I thought like the magic was an interesting concept, and it's a big part of like the book description with the whole breath system and stuff like that. And I was like, well, I don't think I specifically have ever, you know, heard of anything like this. This sounds kind of different. And going into it, I know one of the things that a lot of people, you know, praise, I guess, Brandon Sanderson for is his unique magic systems, and I'm all for that. So I went into this, was like, okay, let's see what this breath system is, because having had, you know, read Elantris, I was like, that stuff seemed pretty cool. It seemed very, you know, unique and original. So I was pretty game for Warbreaker. Con. Next, the con is the magic system. Yeah, like I said, it's two halves of the same coin. Man, I don't even like know where, like, the magic system was a cool concept with the breath system, but I don't think it was like nearly as fleshed out as it could have been. And it's weird because most people don't understand it, but then people do understand it. Like, it felt like convenient in the moment that certain individuals understood how the breath system worked. And for example, like, everyone has breath in them, from my understanding, to some degree. Whether or not they can utilize or weapon it, I think only certain individuals or bloodlines can do it. And no one will understand, like, oh no, that's not how you use breath. Breath can't do that. You can't do this with the magical breath, yada yada yada. And I'm like, okay, well, alright. So people don't understand how it works. And that's fine, because that's part of history, and that's part of things and seeing the world grow, until certain individuals will show up out of nowhere, literally out of nowhere, and will be like, actually, this is how breath works. See, you can do this, and you can do that. And this is the case. You don't understand this, but I will explain it to you. It's like, why does this certain individual know this? And it doesn't happen like once, it happens a couple times. Why does this certain individual know this? And everyone who has it in their system, thousands of people, don't know it. It feels a little too convenient, plot convenient, that certain individuals, and we're never given solid enough reasons why these few characters have a better understanding of breath. I don't know. To be honest, the whole breath thing didn't really seem all that. It didn't really feel like it was something worth going to war for. I don't know. Like, at least that's what I think about when I think of like certain like magic. If I'm going for like some type of magical wand or something like that, you know, it needs to be powerful. And I'm not saying there isn't power in the breath system. It just cool concept, yes. well executed. I don't think so. I do not think so. Next is another pro. There's a love story between a princess and the God King. I loved it. And she kind of, and how it starts off, once again, will not really spoil anything, and where their story kind of evolves into is very, very fun. And I don't know, like, it was very unexpected, especially when you see like the positioning that she's taking when she first meets him, and kind of how their relationship grows over time. It felt a little bit more organic than maybe I was expecting for what is a story that takes place over just like 2 months, I think, a couple of weeks, which, to be honest, is probably a little bit of a flaw of the book, because of how quick people take in some of the things and how quick their characters change. And then you realize, damn, it's only been like 4 weeks, 4, 5, 6 weeks. However, what they are able to accomplish with this relationship with the God King and this princess doesn't really suffer from that fact, like some of the other elements in the story. Because the story that he was able to tell between the two is that well done. It's really that well done. So I'm going to go into the next con. So motive. No one, and I stand by this, no one ever really has much of a convincing reason to be doing what they're doing. No one. And this kind of goes for, this is primarily targeted towards the greater mass of the people in the country. And this is the big example. People kind of praise and worship these people who die and come back as gods. And the gods don't actually see themselves as such. And it's even more odd when the people commonly, and I use this word, commonly, not like 2 or 3 people, no, commonly, do not see these gods as such. They see them as people. They see them as that guy who used to be a bartender. They see this woman as the person who used to own her own shoe shop or whatnot. That is a problem, because it's difficult for me as a reader to get into you building them as a religion when not only they don't see themselves as that, which is one thing, that can be a creative story element, but it doesn't work if they don't see themselves as such and their people don't. Even worse if the people don't, because then it's not a religion. In this book, it's a religion when it's convenient. And once again, it's not me trying to dissuade anyone from reading Warbreaker, but it's just that was a big plot element that just did not work for me, not even in the slightest. So then, oh man, I got cons next. Another con. A main POV is a princess, sister to the other princess, and she goes looking for her sister, and she's gone. And mind you, these are supposed to be like, I think, like 17 to 18-year-old princesses, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry if I get their ages wrong. They're young, is the point. And they're under, basically, their father's watch. This is a princess who originally was going to be married off, So, it's super strange when she's missing, and no one really goes looking for her. No one. And by the end of the story, they're like, well, we can take you back to your kingdom if you want. And she's like, no, I've been living on the streets for 3-4 weeks. I can never go back there. I'll never be the same person. I'm like, what? so she's been homeless for 3 weeks, and now she refuses to go back to a life of luxury? That makes no sense. That was. Now, I'm not saying she didn't endure during this time. I'm not saying that. Her character did go through her trials and tribulations, but for a brief time. Time is its own plot element. It 100% is. And like I said earlier, dealing with the love story, it was very strong enough to where it was able to overpower the short amount of time that the book takes place over. This was not one of those times. This was one of those times where it became very clear that this character's reaction was not justified. It didn't feel believable that this person grew up in a castle in luxury and with all these guards now was like, oh, well, I see life completely different, and because I lived on the streets with the peasants for 3 weeks. I'm understanding it might have been like a month and a half or something like that. I don't know. Well, it wasn't long is the point I'm trying to make. And I could see if she had killed like 7 people and she was going through trauma and stuff like that, then you could, and like I said, with the love story, you were able to tell a story that was able to overcome that time element. The second princess did not have, at least for me, that type of strength to her story. So, the other thing is the last con. I cannot, right off the back of my mind, remember the POV's name of the other god. I want to say there was only 3 POVs, but I did not care for his character. I did not care for his character. It's not even a straight up like, oh, well, he's a con because you didn't like his character. I didn't care for his character because I don't think his character benefited the story. And there are plenty of times where you might read something and you're like, well, you got 5, 6, 7 POVs. Not everyone needs to be a POV sometimes. I'm not saying he didn't add elements to maybe some of the lore and backstory, but adding lore is not a justification to be a story POV. It's not. It really is not. There are ways to add lore, because you have to remember, if you're doing that, that character still has to have a story. Unless that character is being flashed to for like a page or so, where they're just sitting in their professor's chair talking to the reader, and then it flashes back to, then that's kind of different, but that's not what's happening. It felt like he was given something to do in this book, while also kind of being that spearhead for the reader to kind of take in some of the world, which isn't a bad idea. I just don't believe it was well executed in Warhammer in Warbreaker. If I've said Warhammer several times, I apologize. I meant to be saying Warbreaker. Keep getting them mixed up. So my closing thoughts. I thought that the political intrigue was fun. I don't think it was as fun as Elantris's, which I thought the political, espionage or intrigue in that book kept me very engaged with Siri. I forget her name. But Warbreaker felt like a cool concept that truly never made it into a well thought out story. And like I said, as of this review, I've only read 2 Sanderson books. This, Warbreaker, and Elantris. So before anyone's like, well, he don't know what he's talking about. Once again, I probably don't. So take that with a grain of salt. I've not read Stormlight. I've not read Mistborn or any of that stuff. I will. I definitely plan on reading Mistborn. I came upon Elantris and Warbreaker because I wanted to get into the Sanderson wave, and these 2 kind of seem like the 2 books that might have been a little bit more displaced, a little bit more somewhat standalone from the other stuff before I were to kind of jump straight in. But a lot of people keep telling me, well, you didn't read his 2 best books. You read kind of more on like I don't want to use the term bottom shelf, but what might have been his more, weaker received books. And so I do accept that. So I will be eventually reading Mistborn, because I don't know, like, the timeline stuff between Mistborn and Stormlight, if they're connected or whatnot. Stormlight seems like it might be a little bit more up my alley. However, I'm keeping to read Mistborn. So, by the way, this is not like a knock on Sanderson, by no means. Before anyone's like, well, take his head, don't take my head. I pretty much like it attached to where it is, but cannot in good mind say anything more positive about Warbreaker. I think I had like 2 pros and like 5 cons, or 4 or 5 cons. However, would I read a second one? I would read a second one based on this magic system, if it were fleshed out a little bit more. I don't know if I'd be interested in reading these characters again. I'd be open to them showing up in a second one, like a cameo or something like that. I don't know if you could pitch me on these characters' stories continuing in a sequel. Maybe you could. Maybe you couldn't. I don't know. But as of the moment, I don't have interest in, reading more about these specific characters. So, yeah.